Back at it again right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr., and coming up on the show, a little bit of a film study with what the Eagles did against the Washington Commanders, and I think Eagles fans are really going to love this. Just how this Eagles offense took another step in the right direction in that win against the Commanders, and really, these are things that they've been doing over the last 3 games, even in that loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. I just think Philadelphia right now on the offensive side of the football is trending in a good direction, heading toward the playoffs and this game on Sunday in Week 17 against the Buffalo Bills. Really good litmus test game for Philadelphia, by the way, going up against this Bills team, which is looked at as a favorite to win a Super Bowl and, of course, in the AFC. And it really does feel as though Nick Sirianni has implemented a lot of changes within this offense, and he's had some more say. And that was the report going into that Chargers game, that Sirianni, with his offensive background, was more involved in meetings. He started off addressing those offensive meetings before ceding to Kevin Patullo, and he put it on himself to try to get this offense back on track. And in that Chargers game, we saw a lot of adjustments. We saw a lot of changes. They were all visual to the eye. What the Eagles offense was doing, much different than what they had been doing all season long. And you think about what has transpired in the last 3 games, 2 wins over the Raiders and the Commanders, and that Chargers loss, a good mix of under center and in the shotgun for Jalen Hurts. We're seeing some play action from under center. The Eagles have gone empty, and they're having high levels of success in doing that. The Eagles are running less hitches and more crossers. This just makes more sense because when you don't run crossers, you don't target the middle area of the field, you're taking a third of the field away, thus making you more predictable and easier to defend for the opposition. I think the run game the last 3 games has been successful. Saquon Barkley, Tank Bigsby really getting it going in each of the last 3 games. Jalen Hurts, this is huge because he had been bad since the bye week. He's looked comfortable. Last 2 wins, 5 touchdowns and no picks after that 5 turnover game against the Chargers. And I saw this route chart for A.J. Brown thanks to Next Gen Stats. And this is an example of what I'm talking about here. A.J. against Washington, 12 targets, 9 catches, 95 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but this is drastically different than what we saw earlier on this year, where he'd be lining up primarily on the outside, and his route tree was very vanilla and bland. Here, you see him lining up on the left side, the right side, X wide receiver, on the boundary, in the slot, and he's really running routes all across the field. So let's give credit to Nick Sirianni, the offensive coach that he is. Everybody wonders, what does he do since he doesn't call plays, even though Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, others haven't called plays and don't call plays. You don't have to call plays to be a good coach. But when your offense is reeling, when your offense is struggling, and you do have an offensive background, can you help the team make in-game adjustments and get the offense back on track? Nick Sirianni has helped this offense do that. And credit to the Eagles for catering to A.J. Brown, making him happy. But I think what A.J. wanted to be more of a focal point of the pass game, but to be maximized and utilized in a way where he can be successful. You look at this route chart here, that's exactly how you do that. Get your players open, allow them to make an impact. Another thing also that we've seen the last 3 games, which we didn't see at all to start the season, players picking up yak and yards after the catch, thus making also this Eagles offense a lot more explosive. And last week, I talked about these numbers going into the Washington game. Jalen Hurts under center compared to him in the shotgun. And these numbers were, again, going into the Washington game, just to make that point be known. Yards per attempt, 5.4, QBR, 38.4. But then under center, yards per attempt, 10.5, QBR, 60.8. This helps out the quarterback, helps out the running back, helps out the pass game, helps out the run game. We have been clamoring for the Eagles to do these things and just mix it up all season long. Kevin Patullo really wasn't doing that, but he's inexperienced. He needed some guidance. He needed some help. Now this Eagles offense is starting to find its footing here. Most importantly, they're finding confidence, and they had their morale up. and they have momentum going into the playoffs. And then how about these numbers? Speaking of Hurts going empty, this season via True Media, 51 of 70 in empty sets, 610 passing yards, or total yards, excuse me, and a passer rating of 107.7 over his last 2 games from empty. Eagles did this a lot early in the game. We'll talk about it in a moment. 7 of 8, 152 total yards, and a passer rating of 158.3. Going empty also has opened up runs for Jalen Hurts. I also like how the Eagles are making in-game adjustments. Once Washington went to a too high look against the Eagles, Hurts and the Eagles didn't really panic. And Hurts played clean, efficient, smart football. He wasn't forcing throws. And instead, use some of the spacing that the empty formations can create to escape, scramble, and be dynamic with his legs and his feet. Against the Raiders, against the Commanders, Hurts has started to rely on his legs and feet more to make throws out of structure, but also improvisational runs out of structure. And they've come at some really, really big times. And that's what empty can help you do. Also, when you go empty, you spread things out. Defenses can't load the box. So that's when you can call that quarterback draw. And when you have success doing that, the opposition's going to have to counter, and then you counter what they do to respond. When the Commanders went single high safety, Hurts was able to identify that. He's a very smart and cerebral player. That's when he threw that beautiful pass down the left sideline to Devontae Smith. He saw the single high safety there. He knew that he had Smitty one-on-one on the outside, and he threw that dime of a ball right in stride, dropped it right in the bucket for Devontae Smith. Unfortunately, he dropped it. Then the Commanders tried to limit big plays at times in the ball game. And so when the Commanders did that and they played more back and a conservative type of defense, Hurts took what was there. He didn't try to force long throws. He just played smart, high IQ football. In this Commanders game, we didn't see a ton of under center because the Eagles went empty a little bit more. But when the Eagles did go under center, they were efficient in doing so. Hurts on the night, 3 of 4 with the touchdown. Saquon Barkley, again, under center, can get the running game going. 4 carries for 55 yards due to his huge run, which went for 48 yards. And so one of the benefits that you have throwing from under center is also that sometimes you can time the drop back to the route that is being run and the route concept. Hasn't this Eagles offense looked over the last 2 games really against the Raiders and the Commanders more in rhythm and more on time? What was the knock from Troy Aikman during that Monday game against the Chargers? That the offense didn't have a rhythm. It didn't have a flow. The timing really wasn't there. But on the Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith touchdown on the out route, very similar to that go-ahead touchdown against the Rams or the tying touchdown against the Rams, Hurts was under center there. And his drop back tied to Devontae Smith on that out route. And it was a clean route from Smitty, right? He kind of made the defender second guess a little bit. Is he going to break inside? Is he going to break outside? Well, Smitty, one of the best route runners in football, broke to the outside. Hurts gets to the top of his drop, lets that throw rip, touchdown Birds. And then also what it comes down to, this Eagles offense just being better, is that earlier on this season, they were committing a ton of penalties. I think the Eagles have 8 penalties in their last 2 games. And sometimes the big-time players weren't making big-time plays. Well, in this game against Washington, the Hurts touchdown to Goddard, where the pocket started to cave in. Hurts climbed the pocket, threw on the run, put that ball in a spot where only Goddard could get it, and then he rose up, climbed the ladder, and brought that football down. Great throw by Hurts, great play by Hurts, an excellent catch by Dallas Goedert. 10 touchdowns on the year. I think tying him with Pete Retzlaff for the most touchdowns in a single season for an Eagles tight end, going way back decades. A.J. Brown all night was excellent, going off for 95 yards, especially early. The Devontae Smith touchdown, the Saquon Barkley 48-yard run. And then lastly, what I also loved from this Eagles offensive performance is that as the game wore on, the Eagles wore down Washington. Their run game became more successful. All night, the Eagles had success with some inside zone, not running some of that outside zone, which hasn't worked all season long. We've talked about this. And in the second half, the Eagles dominated the game. They pulled away, and they were able to accumulate explosive splash plays. This is something that they did last year a lot, where sometimes games would be close. Then the Eagles would just pull away and beat the brakes off the opposition late in the game. This year, that has been lacking because the Eagles simply haven't been able to do that, which is why we've seen all these close and stressful games. Against Washington, they were able to do that. Against the Raiders, kind of did that too, but it was really just 4 quarters of domination, which again, we saw more of last year compared to this year. So just wanted to break that down for everybody. And I think this is news, and these are developments that Eagles fans should be very happy about with how this offense is playing right now. My name is Chase Sr. If you made it until the end of the show, give me a real one. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also find me on all of my social media platforms at Chase_Senior. I'll be back in the studio tomorrow. We'll preview that Bills